Welcome back. You are here with Dr. Hellman Mayo, and today we're going to be discussing black women, or if you prefer, your queens. Obviously, controversial subject. It's a ruckus, a fight of sorts. There's a lot of pomp and circumcision. There's butthurt. Now, the women, of course, are responsible for this in some cases because one day they're offering it to you, the next they're going, who hurt you? I'm like, what can I say? It was kind of tight, so stop getting angry. You're at fault. I know we don't emphasize accountability too much. But at any rate, I've had black guys in real life and also on the internet.com tell me that black women are sort of the holy grail of independent woman feminism. That some of them are brought up by their mothers to say, I don't need no man, and if I have one, he needs to be subservient to me physically, emotionally, financially. And there's different ways to try to explain this. So some folks will say it's just feminism or the introduction of welfare displacing the black father. Others might argue the fact that black men historically had to travel for work in many cases, or might have been incarcerated, simply forced black women to step up. They didn't really want to, but they had no other choice. I know Clarence Thomas, his dad kind of disappeared when he was a kid, and he was raised by his mom first and then his grandparents. So that's one possible way of looking at things. There is another approach, which is, there's still a lot to be looked into, but essentially, and many of you don't know this, my secondary concentration in college was religion, particularly African religion and culture. I didn't quite get the double major because I needed one more semester, like a couple classes and $5,000, which I said, it's not really worth it. But what we find if you look into sub-Saharan African cultures is that, and this has been tempered somewhat because of Islam and Christianity, but they are actually quite extremely matriarchal. Now that doesn't mean that the men are just kind of sitting there twiddling their thumbs and obeying orders. Many of the guys might actually still be warriors, but the women in a lot of these circles, they are controlling finances, they are getting inheritance. It's through the female line, not the male line. They might even have political power in the tribe or whatever group we might be referring to. So you bring that up because our culture is so obsessed with this concept of nature versus nurture, and we say it's all nurture, right? You can take someone across the world, enslave them, and then free them and say you have to adopt our cultural standards. Well, other folks have suggested, well, maybe culture is deeper than simply what you are taught. Again, a lot more stuff has to be done in terms of looking into this, but it's an interesting idea, particularly because if you read the book Black Like Me, he talks about the stereotypes that white Southerners had of black people, and one of them is that kind of idleness, taking it easy, not being obsessed with deadlines, which you say, well, that's just a crude stereotype. However, it's interesting because if we look here in Africa, this is a Ghanaian writer complaining about very much this whole thing and how it affects society. Also, the former president of Ivory Coast, Laurent Gbagbo, he had a whole campaign on this sort of mentality is holding back our modern economy. So you see how even stuff like that isn't necessarily, we can just get rid of it if we train people to be more like us. And I want to be clear, I'm not passing judgment. Like in the past, I would have been more of a Germanic efficiency, scientific management, that sort of thing. What does Jeff Bezos call it? The purposeful Darwinism. That's how he abuses people in his warehouses. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes, especially that whole system, it seems good when you are at the top, but when you're the grunt worker, it sucks. If they're constantly prodding and obsessing for you to keep doing things. But the point we're making here is that maybe culture goes beyond simply your upbringing. It's just a suggestion, and obviously a lot more research has to be done on that, but I think it's really interesting just seeing that whole thing play out over time. Now, getting back to the main subject, where a lot of black guys complain about dating black women, we have to acknowledge the fact that the black population is smaller, and so if you have a smaller group, certain trends or themes tend to be overemphasized, right? Black women may be feminists, and maybe even militant feminists in some cases. You will find that amongst white women, but perhaps because there's more white women, it's less of a common occurrence that you see, although it's getting worse, to be perfectly clear. But what we have to point out is that one of the big things that I think causes black women and black men to not get along has to do with educational attainment. Now, I want to quickly, I want to call out right here, this is Red Pill Mentor Tokyo, and he was kind enough to send me some of his research, which is excellent. A lot of the Red Pill communities, this is anecdotes and pseudoscience, but he is advancing the academic Red Pill, and this is serious stuff. So he's talking about the fact that women tend to be less interested in guarding their men, especially if they think a guy is hitting on them who might be higher value or quality. You also have the phenomenon where women who are getting more education and making more money are seeing a lot of men as effectively undateable. And that's a really big deal, right? It's even worse when it comes to the black community. So here we have it in 2018, 23.2% of African American men over the age of 25 had earned at least a bachelor's degree. For women, it was 25 or 26.9%. But in 2018, ages 25 to 29, it's 18.6% for black men and 25.7% for black women. Now, in this sense, with high-ranked universities, look at this. Black women currently earn about 2/3 of all African American bachelor's degree awards, 70% of master's degrees, and more than 60% of doctorates. Black women also hold a majority of all African American enrollment in law, medical, and dental schools. You cannot discount the importance of that as it reflects the dating market, because education has become almost a class of sorts. So if you have a master's degree, you're not likely to marry someone who has a high school education. And some of these women, that's how they are. This dude could be a mechanic, his hands covered in grease, but he's making good money, has no debt. Oh, I don't want no uneducated man. She might have, $100,000 in debt. She doesn't care. She wants someone in the same league. In the past, the women had their MRS degree. They went to college just to essentially find a husband. But nowadays, they make good money. And so you almost have to either out-earn them or be content to just kind of settle down and enjoy the house husband, subservient, do whatever she wants. Not all men want to do that. And it just kind of cascades from there. You got to realize this is going to start becoming more obvious as the gap of education between men and women increases and female standards go up because of stuff like Tinder. You're not going to be able to really match up if you don't meet those particular standards. And there's articles of plenty, like, where have all the marriageable men gone? What do you expect, right? When you have this whole mentality where you can have the world as a woman, a lot of dudes who in the past would have been like a provider, a stable guy, you can't really appeal to them anymore because you don't have anything that they don't already control. And certainly the fact, at least with black women, the stereotype is, I'm not discounting their achievements, but the stereotype is, if you're black, female, and you have a master's degree, it's easy to get hired by the government. I don't know how accurate that is, though I have seen some cases of it. I've seen some black women with like 3 master's degrees. So, very big emphasis on education. At any rate, if you're a black woman and you're employed by the government, you got a good job, and this guy is not at the same level, are you going to be interested in dating or marrying him? Most women will say, oh, sure, I would, because they don't want to seem bad, but in actuality, it's a little bit different. Now, I just want to point out quickly, you will have the black women who are more from like a middle-class background, feminine, well-dressed, classy, whatever. But if you point that out in a positive way, some of these black guys online will claim they're only nice to you because you're white and they want your money. And I don't really buy that because it's going to depend, of course, on origin and background. I didn't live in the ghetto, but I lived in a city that had a lot of folks who would be considered ghetto, I suppose. Those women are not nice to you because you're white. In fact, they will typically assume you're a pushover. And when you're not a pushover, that's when the fireworks start because they don't expect it. That's entirely different, right? But even if you take those middle-class black women who are, attractive, well put together, have a nice personality. You put me and then you put like some kind of Tyrone or Chadrone. I don't think you can really argue, oh yeah, they're just going to go for you. They're going to go for the Mayo because, because of money. Even though I am tall and I'm okay looking. I'm nothing special though. So yeah, I don't know. When some black guys have brought this up, what's the best answer to it if you want more of a traditional relationship? I wouldn't say the Caribbean, because Caribbean women tend to be, at least in my experience, very amped up, very frisky. Some say East Africa, and I think almost everyone I've met thinks East African women are attractive. I'd love to get the information of that chick in the Discover IT commercial, but no. I guess it's the big eyes or something. But, you have to even be careful there. I remember Ayaan Hirsi Ali in her book writing, and this is in the 90s, of the Ethiopian girls who are Christians telling her that, I've got a body, of course I'm going to have sex. And so it depends on the way you square it, but I think if you break it down a little bit further, it can help you understand why things are so screwed up. When you have an existing economic order and you completely dishevel it, whether it's because you want women in the workforce due to wars or just you trying to pay people less, the effect it has, and also in the education system, the effect it has on the average guy's ability to find a woman who's a decent quality or to even be on a woman's radar is extremely difficult. So let me know what your thoughts are and add anything you want to the conversation.